Well, hey guys, and welcome to another edition of Sunday School TV. I'm so excited for this morning's lesson as we continue to look at examples of Jesus the healer. And in doing so, I want to say something real quick. We will not have a Zoom tonight as today is Father's Day. And so I want to encourage you guys to spend time with your dads or spend time with family and enjoy this day. So we're not going to have a Zoom, our regular Sunday night Zoom at 7 o'clock. Now let's jump right in. Now the title of this morning's lesson is Jesus Heals a Man at Bethesda. And we're going to see as we move throughout this lesson this morning, our main point is Jesus' grace in our life empowers us to obey Him. How the grace of God in Jesus empowers us, as it enters our life, empowers us to obey Him. And so as we're doing this, we're going to see three different points this morning. We're going to see in the life of this man, as Jesus heals this man at Bethesda, we're going to see how Jesus knows our hopelessness. How Jesus knows our hopelessness. And then we're going to see how He provides grace for our weakness. And then our third and final point that we're going to see this morning is we're going to see that He is at work in our life. How He is actively at work in our life. So, as we're looking at this morning, we're in John chapter 5, starting in verse 2. So let's jump right in. By the sheep gate in Jerusalem, there is a pool called Bethesda in Aramaic, which has 5 colonnades. Within these lay a large number of the disabled, blind, lame, and paralyzed. One man was there who had been disabled for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and realized he had already been there a long time, He said to him, "Do you want to get well?" "Sir," the disabled man answered, "I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up. But while I am coming, someone goes down ahead of me." So real quick, just a little context of what this pool was. So this was a pool that was, local legend had said that when the waters of the pool were stirred, the first person to get in, that it had healing properties, that they could possibly be healed from whatever ailed them, whatever sort of physical ailment they had. And so this was only, though, for the first person to enter the pool. And so here we have a man that is disabled and has been disabled for 38 years, it says. And so he has been waiting at this pool a long time. And Jesus sees this and recognizes this and realizes it. And so as he's laying there, out of the many people who are broken by some sort of physical ailment, waiting at this pool, Jesus sees this man and knows that he's been waiting for a long time. And Jesus asking him this question, we see we get greater insight into this man's brokenness. As we see that he's not just physically broken, but that he is without hope at this point in his life. As Jesus asks him, "Do you want to be well?" And here we see that this man is filled with despair. And this is our first point, that Jesus knows our hopelessness. Because this is what Jesus saw, and just looking at him, He realized the hopelessness of this man. And so that's why He begins this engagement. He asks him, "Do you want to be made well?" And so we know that in this season of the coronavirus and social distancing, that you may have sensed and felt loneliness during this time. And that's what this man is feeling, is complete loneliness, because as the water is stirred, even though he desires to get there, it takes him, simply because of his disability, it takes him too long to get to the water. And so somebody gets in before him and takes advantage of the opportunity. And his only focus for healing is this pool of water. And he's been waiting at this pool of water for healing for so long. And that's what he tells Jesus. He wishes that he could get in, but he can't be healed, is his attitude. He can't be healed because there's no way that he can get to the pool in time. And so what we see in knowing this, and Jesus asking him, "Do you want to be well?" Is that he's not going to find the physical healing that he needs by the stirring of the water. And what Jesus is going to provide for him is not just the physical healing, but spiritual healing. And that's one of our main themes throughout this series of lessons. And so Jesus, though, is the ultimate healer. And Jesus has the ultimate solution to our hopelessness and despair. Just as he saw the hopelessness of this man, he sees our hopelessness, and he knows our hopelessness. And he knows the broken state of our flesh, of our bodies because of sin. And he desires for us to be healed, just as he desires healing for this man, just as he has a heart for this man's brokenness. So let's keep reading and see what our next point is. So point number 1, Jesus knows our hopelessness. So we pick back up in verse 8. "Get up," Jesus told him. "Pick up your mat and walk." Instantly, the man got well, picked up his mat, and started to walk. Now that day was the Sabbath. And so the Jews said to the man who had been healed, "This is the Sabbath. The law prohibits you from picking up your mat." He replied, "The man who made me well told me, 'Pick up your mat and walk.'" "Who is this man who told you, 'Pick up your mat and walk'?" they asked. But the man who was healed did not know who it was, because Jesus had slipped away into the crowd that was there. After this, Jesus found him in the temple and said to him, "See, you are well. Do not sin any more, so that something worse doesn't happen to you." The man went and reported to the Jews that it was Jesus who had made him well. So here we're going to see our second point, is that Jesus not only knows our hopelessness, but that he provides grace for our weakness. That he knows our hopelessness and he provides grace for our weakness. So he heals this man not by taking him to the pool, not by showing him that he was rewarded for his many years of waiting, as there were many other people there who needed to be healed. But Jesus, seeing the hopelessness of this man, hearing the despair that he had lived his life in, heals this man and tells him simply to get up, take his mat, and walk. And he does so, and he's able to instantly get up, take his mat, and walk away, something that he had not done for a long, long time. And so here we see an extra point that there's power in the Word of God. As Jesus is here through the spoken word, but we interact with God through his written word in the Bible. And so here we see there's power in the Word of God. And as Jesus speaks, diseased bodies that are broken, respond. And that's what he does in our lives. He speaks into the brokenness of our life. He speaks the gospel, the truth, the good news, and we respond to him in faithfulness and obedience. So Jesus, notice, doesn't right away, he didn't get grace because he obeyed. See, Jesus provides grace for this man because this man did not deserve this. He had done nothing to earn this, just as nobody there had done anything to earn it. But Jesus, because he saw the brokenness and despair, provided grace for this man's weakness. And so he was given grace first, and then he had the ability to obey the command of Jesus. And so as he walks in obedience to the grace that was shown him, we see that not only does this man need to be healed of his broken body, but he needed to be healed spiritually as well. So he's healed physically, and then he leaves and is questioned, and this ramps up the Jews' hatred toward Jesus and their desire to persecute him. And Jesus finds this man again, and that's where he reveals to him the spiritual healing that he can provide. And so he receives grace first, walks in obedience, and then Jesus uses that moment. He uses the grace that he showed him in the physical healing to then inspire him to walk in holiness. So Jesus provides us the same thing, that he has given us spiritual healing in the gospel so that we might walk in holiness. So that Jesus' grace empowers us to obey him, just as the grace that Jesus showed to this man empowered him to walk, physically be healed, and then allowed him to walk in holiness at the command of Jesus. So let's continue reading. Our third and final point that we're going to see is that Jesus is at work in our life. So Let's keep reading. Pick up in verse 16. Therefore, the Jews began persecuting Jesus because he was doing these things on the Sabbath. Jesus responded to them, "My Father is still working, and I am working also." This is why the Jews began trying all the more to kill him. Not only was he breaking the Sabbath, but he was even calling God his own Father, making himself equal to God. So we see a few things here in these last verses. It calls to mind that Jesus is one with the Father. He is one with God. And so he was there when man was created in the image of God. And so since that time, he has been at work to restore us with him, to restore mankind and the relationship that existed at creation. And God has continued to work to preserve his creation. And so here we see in the words of Jesus that God is still working in our lives. Jesus responded to him, verse 17, "My Father is still working, and I am working also." So we can rest assured that God is at work in our lives for his glory, and that will be our good. So God is always at work. He is at work in our lives, ultimately for his glory, so that he would receive glory through us, his creation, so that also in glorifying him, that will be our good. That will be where we find what is best. And that's what we see here at the end of this interaction, is that God is still working, just as Jesus said, and that he was following in the footsteps of his Father. And so we see here the Trinity at work, but those are the three things that we want to take away from this morning, is that Jesus knows our hopelessness and provides grace for our weakness, and then he is still at work in our lives, that he continues to work in us to transform us into, to take away our brokenness and transform us into the image of God that he created us to be from the beginning. So Jesus' grace in our life empowers us to obey him. I hope this lesson has been really encouraging for you guys to know that he is still at work in your life, that he still values you as being created in his image, and that he sees you where you're at. He sees your hopelessness. He sees my hopelessness and our hopeless state because of sin, and he acts on that, and he provides grace in our weakness so that we can have a way out of brokenness, and so that he can work in our lives for his glory and our good.